because you have read the Hadith and studied the Quran in context, you know that Mohammed claimed he received this verse 2 years earlier. And you know that the kidnappers and the slayers were Muslims. As for Allah being the best plotter, a world-class schemer, I couldn't agree more. He is the best in the world at what he does. Prince Charming says,
Ishak, I am the best of plotters. I deceived them with my guile, so that I delivered you from them.
Webster defines guile the same way the Bible defines Satan. Insidious and cunning, a crafty or artful deception, duplicity.
Koran 8, verse 31. When our verses are rehearsed to them, they say, we have heard this before.
In other words, this is plagiarized.
If we wished, we could say words like these. These are nothing but stories of the ancients.
The reason the local Arab population, Yathrib, was questioning the prophet's credentials was that he had already trotted out the second surah. It was filled with convoluted stories lifted from the pages of the Torah. This verse confirms that bad Muslims were smart enough to recognize a false prophet. In the next passage we find Mohammed sidestepping the no miracles, no prophet, and no signs, no God criticisms. It's as feeble as ever.
Koran 8:32. Remember how they said, O Allah, if this Koran is indeed the truth revealed from you, rain down on us a shower of stones from the sky, or send us a painful doom. But Allah was not going to send them a penalty while you, Muhammad, were among them. But what plea have they that Allah should not punish them? What makes them so special? They obstructed men from the holy mosque, though they were not its fitting and appointed guardians. Its custodian can only be the one who keeps his duty to Allah. Their prayer and worship at the house of Allah, the Kaaba, is nothing but whistling and clapping of hands. They will have to taste the punishment because they disbelieved.
This passage says that pagans believed Allah was God. They prayed to Him and worshipped at His house. As such, it destroys Muhammad's justification for killing them. These verses also contained lies and a confession. The Meccans never restricted access to the mosque. The Kaaba was the centerpiece of Qusay's religious scam. It was their meal ticket. The more pilgrims, the better. It was Muhammad and his Muslims who were intolerant. They would ultimately restrict access, prohibiting all non-Muslims from entering Mecca. The confession provides additional support for the profitable prophet plan. Muhammad was claiming ownership of the Kaaba Inc. because he deemed himself more deserving than the rightful owners. He had made a deal with the devil. Custodianship of the Kaaba, of Allah's house, was to be his reward.
Koran 8, verse 36. The unbelievers spend their wealth to hinder man from the way of Allah, and so they will continue to spend, but in the end they will have intense regrets and sighs. It will become an anguish for them, and they will be subdued. The unbelievers shall be driven into hell, in order that Allah may distinguish the bad from the good and separate them. Allah wants to heap the wicked one over the other and cast them into hell. They are the losers.
The Meccan merchants had promoted the way of Allah. Allah's house was all the Quraysh had going for them. But that lie isn't the problem with this verse. Muhammad, on behalf of his spirit, is telling non-Muslims that anguish awaits them, that they will be subdued, forced into submission, and then driven into hell. Terror, a living hell, is the legacy of Muhammad. Even Ishak sees Allah as demented.
Allah said, Leave me to deal with the liars. I have fetters and fire and food which chokes. I will smote the Quraysh at Badr.
The hateful and violent message of the Quran is clear. It's as clear as Mein Kampf.
Koran 8, verse 39. So fight them until there is no more fitna, or disbelief.
Non-Muslims, in other words.
And all submit to the religion of Allah alone in the world. But if they cease, Allah is seer of what they do.
In or out of context, this is unequivocal. The Islamic war machine must continue to roll until every soul on earth
submits to the religion of Allah.
There will be no exceptions, no understandings, no appeasements, no compromises, no treaties. It is surrender or die. And this verse cannot be misinterpreted, corrupted, or dismissed. The order is clear.
Fight until the whole world is in submission to Islam.
But should you want confirmation, Ishaq, the first imam to record the message of fundamental Islam, interprets the verse this way.
He said, fight them so that there is no more rebellion, and religion, all of it, is for Allah only. Allah must have no rivals.
This verse should be hung in every church, in every synagogue, in every school, in every state house. It ought to be plastered in the front door of the State Department, the Pentagon, the Capitol, and the White House. Incidentally, there are 2 wars being announced here, not one. The first is religious. The second is spiritual. Submission to the religion of Islam is entirely political, a war designed to suppress and to plunder. That battle is being fought with swords, guns, and bombs. It destroys physical things, including the flesh. The spiritual war is being waged for souls. Allah, as Satan, will not tolerate a rival. Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater, is the battle cry of this war. Satan wants us to worship him. Islam is simply his most effective and deadly scheme. Unfortunately, the Quran's dark spirit knew how to motivate a merciless band of religious fanatics.
Ishaq, Allah taught them how to divide the spoil. He made it lawful and said, 1/5 of the booty belongs to the apostle.
This is confirmed in the surah.
Quran 8 verse 40. If people are obstinate and refuse to surrender, know that Allah is your supporter, and know that 1/5 of all the booty you take belongs to Allah, and to the messenger, and for the near relatives of the messenger, orphans, and the needy wayfarer.
We've heard this before.
Believe in Allah, and in what we sent down to our slave on the day of victory over the infidels when the 2 armies clashed, and Allah has the power to do all things.
Fortunately, all Allah/Satan can do is play with the weather and tempt men to do his bidding. Unfortunately, all too many are willing. The temptation in this case was money. Muslim militants got rich, at least by Arab standards, robbing Mohammed's enemies. Of course, they had to give the Prophet 1/5 of the spoil, yet that was no more onerous than what Blackbeard required. Since Badr was only a ragtag mob of mercenary misfits against a bunch of camel-driving merchants, you have to wonder about the inadequacy of a spirit who called them armies and required 1,000 demonic angels to carry the day. I wouldn't bet my life on Team Islam. You may have picked up on it already, but if not, Mohammed had a little problem. He and his raiders had gone after the merchandise-laden caravan. The money they sought eluded them. So while they stole some swords and coats of mail and kidnapped some men for ransom, the expedition was a bust. The caravan got away.
Quran 8:42. Remember, you were on the hither side of the valley, and they were on the yonder bank. The caravan was on lower ground still, by the coast. Even if you had made a mutual appointment to meet, you would certainly have declined to fight and failed to achieve your goal, because Allah needed to accomplish a different matter. Those who were destroyed had to perish as a clear demonstration
of Allah's seductive control.
And those who lived survived as positive proof of His authority. Allah is He who hears and knows.
In other words, Allah won the coin toss. His lust for murder took precedence over Muhammad's yearning for money. As for the dark spirit of Islam hearing and knowing, that's true. Satan is able to maneuver in time and travel unseen. He listens and learns how to best tempt his stooges. Everyone has a soft spot, a longing, a desire, something that they crave.
Quran 8:45. O believers, when you meet an army, be firm and think of Allah's name much, that you may prosper.
It was a hellish bargain they had made for money.
Obey Allah and His Messenger, and do not dispute
with them,
lest you lose courage and your power departs. Persevere.
The Hadith says,
Ishaq, Muslims, fight in Allah's cause. Stand firm and you will prosper. Help the Prophet, obey him, give him your allegiance, and your religion will be victorious.